I will never not love Sam and Diane. Just as a concept, I just absolutely love them. I'm so emotionally invested in the pair of them that when we have episodes like The Triangle, I become really overly emotional. This is a beautiful episode. It's the 15th episode of the 4th season of Cheers, directed, of course, by the wonderful James Burrows. And there will be spoilers from now as I go through various aspects of the episode. For the most part, I'll go through things chronologically, but I'll talk about the part of the episode that focuses on Norm and Cliff very briefly, and I'll just deal with all of that in one go because it doesn't take up too much time. I think they could have done a tiny bit more with this, but at the same time, I realised that would take time away from Sam and Diane, and with this episode, I wouldn't want that. It actually starts off with Cliff inviting Norm to his house for a party, maybe not the right word, but a gathering of people from his work, and then Norm is the only person he's inviting from Cheers. They're going to chill out, have some food, and also paint the attic. Norm is kind of reluctant, but he ends up agreeing. And then a little later, I think maybe halfway through the episode roughly, we have this brilliant exchange between Norm and Woody, where Woody says, when Norm walks in, he says, "What can I get you, Mr. Peterson?" And Norm replies, "Clifford Clavin's head." Needless to say, things didn't go to plan. It turns out Norm was the only one who showed up. He ended up doing all of the painting while Cliff and his mother fought. So not a bad part of the narrative, very funny. As I said, I think they could have maybe done a tiny bit more of it, but what we got was pretty great. The rest of the episode focuses on our triangle of Sam, Diane, and Frasier. And it starts off, this part of the narrative starts off with Frasier basically bad-mouthing psychiatrists, and this is obviously because he's down on his luck, and the gang kind of says somebody needs to do something to get his confidence back. And after a very, very, very lengthy conversation about Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, however long you think that conversation lasts, it's probably longer. Being a fan of Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, rather enjoyed that. In the middle of that conversation, Diane tells Sam that he should pretend to be depressed so Frasier can diagnose him and help cure him, and it will give him his confidence back and hopefully set him on a happier, more positive path. Initially, Sam is reluctant, but he finally agrees. He tells Frasier, and Frasier initially doesn't bite. He's not interested. But the next day, he comes into Cheers with a spring in his step and says he feels, and I quote, delicious. And he confides in Sam that this is because he had a dream and then he woke up and had the answers to Sam's problems, or I guess the reason for Sam's problems. And that's because Sam is still in love with Diane. And Frasier, in Sam's office, tells Sam that the first step to getting over this or dealing with this is to say it out loud. And obviously Sam doesn't want to say this out loud, but we eventually find Sam saying, "I love Diane." And Frasier breaks down in a sob. Cut to the next scene immediately a couple of minutes later on, and Frasier says that he's received this catharsis with Sam saying this, and he demands basically that Sam tells Diane he loves her. And Frasier says, "I'm going to go away." He's actually going to go and buy some clothes, and I want all of the details. And pretty much the rest of the episode is in Sam's office. Although we're all in this space for a lot of time in this episode, it works very well. It never gets stale. Everything constantly moves forward. And for quite a while afterwards, Sam and Diane try and concoct this story about what they'll tell Frasier happened when Sam told Diane he loved her. And they come up with this fabulous story, and I love how they move around the office quite a bit. We have Diane going up to Sam, sitting next to him, then crossing over the room, and it's very well done. We're constantly being asked to move our eyes around the room and keep things moving as the story moves forward. So even though we're in this space for quite a while, it never ever gets stale. And honestly, I loved listening to them making up this story. And then in true Sam and Diane fashion, they begin to fight. And this basically comes about because Diane confesses she didn't like the ear nibbles. And Sam retaliates by saying she looked like a banana in what she thought was a very sexy nightgown. And she ends up saying she hates him, and Sam shouts it back at her just as Frasier comes into the room. And I have to say, quite bold of Frasier to just walk into Sam's office without knocking, but nevertheless, that's what he does. He's clearly feeling much better about things. And we have this brilliant performance. Frasier starts shouting at both of them. He calls them emotional infants. He tells them repeatedly that they're fighting like this because they're both in love with each other. They always will be in love with each other, and they're just not willing to admit it. And he shouts at them and tells them he's going to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, referring to himself, and storms out of the room. And the audience applauds at that moment, and I think the applause is for two reasons. One, it's because Kelsey Grammer gave an amazing performance and he deserved an applause. But also, I feel like the applause was for the fact that finally somebody said the thing that we've all been thinking. Finally. Well done, Frasier, for finally confronting them and telling them, just as we all feel, that they are still in love. And it was just this big relief that finally the cat is out of the bag. And we have this beautiful moment where Sam and Diane are both just sitting initially in silence. And then Diane asks, what do you think about what Frasier said? And Sam's reply is brilliant, because he just says, Frasier's a pretty sharp guy. He doesn't deny anything. He doesn't admit it, but he doesn't deny it either. And I thought that was pretty beautiful. And I got very emotional because I love Sam and Diane as a pairing. I just absolutely love them. I also love them both individually and always want them both to be very happy. And I'm very much emotionally attached to them as characters. And it's just such a beautiful moment. And also a stepping stone for Frasier, with Frasier finally starting to head in the right direction again. And I loved it. It's a beautiful episode from start to finish. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. As I said, I wish we could have had a tiny bit more of Norman Cliff, but at the same time, that would have taken time away from the wonderful moments with Sam and Diane. So basically, my complaint is the episodes aren't long enough. And that's always how I feel. I just wish they were double the length, triple the length. Obviously, they don't need to be, but the more cheers, the better, and the more Sam and Diane, the better. And Frasier's role in this was just perfect, and I love Sam, and I love Diane, and together, I love Sam and Diane, and the triangle is a brilliant episode. Definitely one I'm always going to thoroughly enjoy. If I were to pick my personal highlights from this, well, it would be Norm's comment about Clifford Clavin's head, which I loved, and Frasier's outburst in the office, and then the moments that followed between Sam and Diane. Those would be my three personal highlights. But the episode as a whole, absolutely adored it. The triangle is as perfect can be with Sam and Diane. But everybody else was brilliant. No complaints from me at all. Pretty sure the triangle is always going to be one that I absolutely adore.